Hello and welcome to this presentation. This was first written for the Welsh Practice Managers Conference on the 13th of November, and the purpose is to give you some practical insights on configuration reporting and SNOMED. My name is Sarah Warren, and hopefully you'll find this useful. So until recently I was Head of Development with Arden's EMIS, and prior to that, as you can see there, a lot of primary care experience of all sorts. So today's agenda, there'll be some EMIS configuration elements, managing alerts and pop-ups, looking at trigger viewer, use of F12, etc. Some discussion around SNOMED issues to support with migration, reporting hints and tips, and then an overview of the consultancy I can offer. Starting with configuring the home page, which a lot of people don't realise that you can do. So by clicking on the Configure Homepage button up on the top right, you come up then with this screen here, and you can configure whether or not you see appointments on the homepage and which session holder you wish to see. You can configure the quick launch menu, which is this menu over on the left hand side here, and you can also configure your RSS feed and the size that you want to see that in. The quick launch menu, by pressing configure, you can then choose which buttons you want to see on there. So I'm going to remove carers, and once I press OK on both of those screens, you will see that the carers button on the left here disappears completely. You can also customize your quick access toolbar. So going up to the little arrow up here, you can customize your quick access toolbar, and again putting the most important, the most frequently accessed by you buttons onto that toolbar to make it as useful as possible for you. So by clicking on something on the left and clicking add over onto the right, it puts it then up into that quick access toolbar. You could see there that changed there. I've now got carers up there. The appointment book. You can also obviously configure the appointment book. So clicking on the apps config, the little cog up there, will bring up the configuration options for this screen. And here you've got several user options and also configuration options. So looking at this screen initially, you've got how do you want to see things? Do you want to see day view, week view? To me, the most important one is here, sessions appear closed after. Here it's set at 0 minutes. So that means as soon as you get to midday, a session that finished at midday will collapse up and effectively become invisible. And so when you've got the GP seeing patients late, you've got patients adding into the end, you've got a long triage list, then it is disappearing before they've finished. So it's worthwhile setting that to make sure that the session stays open after the allotted time that it's due to finish. Session holder filters are also very useful because that shows you the people who you're able to pick easily from the left hand side down there. The other option that I want to highlight is DNA management. So this is you can enable automatic DNA using a default reason if a patient hasn't arrived within a certain amount of time. So you can choose that and you set it as the organisation. So if you want to DNA a patient after 5 minutes, you can. If you want to have it opened for 15 minutes because you're happy that they can DNA after that time, then you can do that as well. And the DNA reasons are listed below there as well. You can pull in additional reasons. You can make a particular one a default. So text search in consultations. Many people aren't aware that you can search for free text within any of the modules here. You've got consultations, problems, investigations, care history, etc. And it will search the entire record, the entire module for free text that you choose. So looking through this by clicking on the text search button, you can then type in any free text that you want to search for. It'll pull up any instances of that within that screen. So it just allows you to do that text search, which is something you can't do in population reporting, as we know. Consultation config, there's also a number of elements within care record config. So for example, users can set up their own quick codes and text. So that is your little shortcut string of letters, characters that will auto-populate a string of free text for you, something that you frequently end up wanting to record in a record. You can make it quick and easy for you. You can also, as a user, set up your autocorrect. So this is where you keep typing the same word wrong every single time you type it. You can autocorrect that by setting it up. It needs to be set up manually and it's per user, but you can do that if it's something that's useful. Consultation quick picks as an organisation are really, really helpful. So this is where you can use the little lightning bolt in a consultation to auto-code something that you want to particularly code the same way consistently through your practice. So in this case, for example, looking at the examination, you set them up here in consultation config, and this is what you see here, so you can see that's where it appears for you. There are also a number of settings you can configure in workflow. Task toolbar settings, so you know in the home page across the very top you get the list of hyperlinks which takes you to different sections of workflow. You can configure which are available to you by selecting them in here. So you would, if you wanted to remove one, you would select it on the right and click it across on to the left. You can also configure quick codes and text. So just as I showed you in care record config, you can also configure them here, and that is per user and per organization. So again, strings of text that you're frequently typing, you can preset to have a little shortcut for. Inbound user matches and inbound code matches, these two are very useful. If you've got something coming into your workflow from a lab that's not matching correctly to a user or is not being coded correctly, this is where you can go and just default that or set the default for that so that it makes sure it puts it in the correct, or it assigns it the correct details each time. You only need to do it once if something's coming in incorrect, and then make sure after that it'll be matched to the correct code or the correct user as appropriate. And workflow, this is really useful. So this is when you are working through a workflow list of prescriptions that are awaiting signing, and you're constantly getting protocols popping up in the screen, which is causing your prescribing clinicians a lot of delay when they're trying to process these. You can switch them off in here. It's worthwhile being aware of that. So patient warnings, these are the alerts. These are the ones that pop up in the middle of the screen that you have put in there as an organisation. So for example, this is a good example of one that's been there. It's been there a long time, it's out of date, needs bloods by 31st of January 24. You can see here, this is on the Précis bar. When you expand the Précis bar, you can see what's there. And you can manage those. So you need to manage them by clicking on the button there. You can delete them manually. You can't switch it off as an organisation. But what you can do is search and report for them. So you can search for any patient with one of these warnings, and then you can report on what that text is and go through and make sure that all the text that's appearing is still valid, deleting any that you want to remove. So moving on then to triggers, I'm using Template Manager here as this is designed for a Welsh audience, but you go to Configuration Template Manager and look at Trigger Viewer. So Trigger Viewer, this is going to show you all those things that are popping up when you do a certain thing. So for me, for example, I got really annoyed on my EMIS system because every time someone put in diabetes, it was coming up with a string of different templates that it was giving me the option to use. Now, I didn't want to use any of them actually, I wanted to use something different entirely. So I wanted to go into to find which things were being triggered and switch them off. So I'll show you how you would do that. Within Template Manager, you go to Trigger Viewer. Then we're looking at System Trigger. What type of trigger is it that's triggering that thing to appear? And you can see here it could be all sorts of different things, whether it's adding a code or loading patient record, lots of different triggers available. So I'm choosing to look here, add a code. So the system triggers add a code. The code I'm wanting to look at in this case is asthma. So whenever I add the code of asthma, what is it that's popping up to offer me the use of? I can see here that actually the templates that might have been triggered have been deactivated. You can see they're inactive, but there are 2 protocols popping up. If there's anything in that list that you want to deactivate, you again go into Configuration Template Manager, and then you want to search for a template. So the template that you've just seen there, you want to search now, you want to deactivate something. So you search for diabetes. You only want to see the active ones. So you've got all the different options in the drop down here on the right, but you only want to look at the active ones. We don't care at the moment about inactive ones. So I've searched for diabetes and I've come up with all of these. So all of these come up when I search diabetes, which means that the risk of choosing the wrong template is really high. So I can select the template that I want to deactivate within the file structure. I can then right-click it, status, and deactivate, and that then will stop that coming up. If there's a trigger attached to it, it will stop it triggering, and it'll stop it being found in a search when a user goes in to find a template. So, use of protocols. So protocols, as we've seen, can be triggered. So those ones that we've just looked at that are triggered when you add a code, but you can also manually launch a protocol. Protocols are really helpful for following a flowchart effectively through a process. So it might be that you want to complete a template and then launch a document, or you want to complete a template and then launch a medication, or you want to add a code and a medication. I mean, they're used a lot for flu, for example, when you want to just add a string of codes in order to make sure that you're correctly coding the right vaccination. So what I've done here is set up a quick test. So the what we call the F12 key, that's where you can manually launch these protocols. So I've created a little one there. I've added it to my F12. So I've clicked F12 and put it on there. And this one is asking me which template I'd like to use. So it's giving me a curated list of templates available to my users to enable them to choose the correct ones, the ones that I'd prefer them to use. And you can see here that's coming up with that asthma template. And then when I save that, it completes the flow. Okay, moving on to SNOMED discussion now. Looking at some of the key elements of the SNOMED migration and things to be aware of within SNOMED. So looking first of all at migration and at searches. When you've migrated to SNOMED from Read, you know that a lot of your searches are perhaps uneditable now if they've got code lists within them, and you can only change the time frame. So it's worthwhile considering organising your folders, thinking about which searches you want to keep, which searches actually you're not going to worry about updating. And the ones you want to keep, you obviously need to then spend time updating them. So you want to really curate that list and make sure you're only updating the ones that you need to update. For updating searches, you can get the terms of the codes in the search by just printing the definition. So that's going to print on the ribbon, and then you can see there that little screenshot is if you choose definition, okay, it will then give you a printout of the code terms used in the search. However, it's most useful to have the concept IDs when you're trying to recreate a search. So the following steps will help you with that. If you go to edit a search, you have the options here. You can export it, which is recommended as a backup, but actually I think in this case we want to edit. This is a very familiar screen, I'm sure, to everybody. You get these hyperlinks, view all clinical codes. If you click on one of those, you come up with the list of codes that have been used in that search. You may find that you've got an export button down here, and that will allow you to export those codes into a format like that, which will match the read code to the term, to the SNOMED. However, it may be that you don't have that export button yet. I believe it's coming to Wales soon, in which case there is an alternative. If you don't see that export option, you can do a snip of the concept ID. So you want to literally snip all the numbers in that concept ID column and paste it into OneNote. And I say OneNote because it allows you to then right-click it and copy text from picture, as you can see in that screenshot. That then gives you a list of numbers that you can copy and paste directly into your search in EMIS, and that just saves any mistyping, and it means that you get exactly the right concept IDs in your search. Templates, not that dissimilar. So to be able to edit a read template, you can press edit in the same way as search, and you can edit. If there are no hierarchical elements, you can edit the template without any problem. And what I mean by hierarchical elements is something like a last coded entry or a code browser. So you can see in this example here, you've got last entry of a code, and that's in read, and this last entry of a code is in read. However, this clinical code single item has been mapped across. So if I delete these two elements, then I would be able to save the template, but I don't want to lose these from my template. So what I need to do is recreate them. So you would simply pull across a new last coded entry from your template configuration and put the codes back in. So again, to get those codes out in the first place, what you can do is export or take your snip to OneNote, and then you can recreate that element of a template. And once you've recreated or removed all of your read-coded elements, then you will be able to save your template, and it will be editable from then on. So, a bit more about SNOMED itself then. Many SNOMED codes have multiple terms. Organisations can choose to use the preferred term. Now, what is the preferred term? Preferred term is what SNOMED calls the fully specified name. So that is the most accurate medical name for that particular term. So using the example here, I've got myocardial infarction and heart attack. Myocardial infarction is the fully specified name or the preferred term. Heart attack is a more colloquial way of describing it. So you can choose to use the preferred term, and it will make sure that it does put that in automatically. And you would do that by going into organisation configuration and then organisation details. And in the middle of the screen, you've got that option. So going into all of that in a bit more detail, you've got SNOMED, you have concept IDs and description IDs. So each medical term has a unique concept ID. So in my example of heart attack and myocardial infarction, they have the same concept ID because myocardial infarction is that fully specified name that has that concept ID, and any colloquial alternatives use the same concept ID but may have a different description ID. So in this case here, you can see they've got the same concept ID here. They're the same thing, but they've got a different description ID because of the slight difference in the term. So yeah, description IDs are a different way of describing that concept. But note, really importantly, a search will only care about the concept ID. So you only need to include each one of these once in a search in order to pull up anybody with either of those recorded on their record. So another question has always been around categorization. What do we mean with these different categorizations? So SNOMED codes sit in different categories. For example, you might have a finding, which is something that's directly discoverable about a patient's clinical state, a procedure, which is something you carry out on a patient, or an observable entity, which the definition there is question or procedure which constitute a finding. So taking that slightly backwards, you might do a blood test on a patient. You might get a result as a serum cholesterol level, which is the result. And then as a result of that, you would then look at the result and go, okay, this patient has a raised serum cholesterol. So they're different. They're all codes. They all belong on the patient record, but they're different categorization. So choosing the right one will often be obvious, but there's occasions where you end up with the same term, but a different type of code. And EMIS, in those cases, EMIS Web does help. So for example, there you see urine pH test twice. One of them is the observable entity and the other one is the procedure. But remembering as well, you can also use your filters if you want to make sure that you're only picking up observations or procedures, etc. Then you can use the filters within your code selector. So other questions around the SNOMED browser and why there are greyed out codes. Now, there is an online browser. The link is there, and that contains all available SNOMED codes. It shows the parents and children, and it's everything in there. EMIS Web only contains a subset of these codes, based on the codes that were mapped from READ originally, that were originally within EMIS, bearing in mind that the whole SNOMED dictionary is designed for any medical situation, and actually the EMIS Web is used primarily in a primary care setting and needs only therefore a subset of those codes anyway. It does result in a number of codes appearing in EMIS but not being pickable. You can see in this case the greyed out codes are not codes that we can select. If there is a code that you feel ought to be there, so you found a code, you can find it in the SNOMED browser online but you can't see it in EMIS Web, then you can request these codes from EMIS Health, from Optum. They are very responsive at putting codes in. As long as they do appear in the SNOMED browser, they are very responsive at putting codes into EMIS Web. So the SNOMED code hierarchy. Bear in mind this is completely different from a READ hierarchy. So instead of READ, where you would have H3 as asthma and then all the codes H33, H333, etc. were all more close definitions of the condition the patient has. In this case, the SNOMED hierarchy links a code to all of its parents with an is-are relationship. So for example, COPD has two parents because it is a chronic disease of the respiratory system and it is a tracheobronchial disorder. So you could say that COPD is a child of both of those conditions, but you wouldn't necessarily say that every tracheobronchial disorder is COPD, and so on. So looking at the importance of that hierarchy, a patient with mild COPD, if I enter that code into the record, I want to be intentionally specific because this patient has mild COPD, and that's correct. But when I'm searching, I want to pick up everybody with any COPD. So I will pick a code hierarchy, a code higher in the hierarchy, and look at including all of the children. However, you can't always include all of the children. In this example here, I want to find pregnant people. So I pick up pregnancy. However, if I include all of its children, you'll see here it's also including postnatal examination, which is obviously a post-pregnancy code. So you do need to review the children that you're including and be clear that you are looking to include all of its children. Very good practice is to not include the children, but to pull each code in individually. So moving on now to reporting hints and tips. And these are things that just will help you doing more advanced reporting within EMIS Web. So, relative run date. This is the ability to run a search as if it were a past or future date. For example, you could use last month within the search to save changing the dates. So I'm going to take my all blood tests last month. You can see here that it's set as last month as the date. And when I run it, I can use the advanced options and change the relative run date. So if I change it, for example, here to the 1st of December, then it's going to look at all blood tests done during the month of November, because it's saying last month and it's looking back from the 1st of December. So that's a really, really useful tool. By looking at the 1st of December, it's telling me how many I've done in the current month. If I set it at 1st of November, it would tell me how many I'd done in October. So that's a very, very useful tool. Check patient. Now everybody knows about check patient. You go down to your population included, you right click and you check patient on any of the patients included or indeed excluded from a search. But actually I want to check a patient. I know the patient I want to check, but I don't want to have to go through that entire list to find them. I can just go to check patient on the ribbon, and that will let me choose any patient within my EMIS system and see whether they are included or excluded in the search, and indeed what it is that's pulled them into or rejected them from the search. So that's a very, very useful tool. Library code lists. So EMIS has a bank of library code lists. I believe in Wales these are still in read at the moment. There's a bit of work going on in the background. They will be updated to SNOMED before long. But I will show you how to use them anyway. It's very, very useful to know that they exist. So when you're creating a search and you want to add a rule, you're familiar with seeing that little group of options. I'm going to use the middle one, use a rule from the library. And then I'll search SNOMED diabetes and it will come up with all these different code lists that are available to me to use in my search. Pulling one of them in will look like that then in my search. It's best practice not to leave it looking like that though in your search. It's best practice to double click on that. It will come up with this option, telling me it's a library item, and I can remove the link and edit it as a normal feature, which I'm going to do. And it then comes up looking like that, which is a little bit odd, but those ref sets pertain to national code lists and are recognisable as such. You can't search for them on their own in EMIS, but this is what you can end up with. Auto reports. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with auto reports, that you write a search, you run it, you then auto report it, and it will pull out all of the codes in a search. But it will pull out all the codes in search rules, and it will pull out basic demographics. So just to quickly run through what that looks like, if I auto report, and I'm going to choose not to run the report for now, but I do want to edit it once it comes up. And it comes up with clinical code columns. Those are every rule comes up as its own column, and I can rename that. So I can see my first one is my diabetics, and then my second one is my HbA1c. So at the moment, it's literally mirrored the rules in the search, but I want to edit this so it's showing just the latest one HbA1c. At the moment, it's going to show any that are over 0, but I want to remove this, and then it's going to show me the latest one of my HbA1cs. So you can easily see the latest value that's been recorded for a patient. Aggregate reports. So this is a way of counting activity rather than patients. All of these searches, the patient count here, population count, is literally that. It's a patient count. Aggregate reports allow you to count activity or count things, count codes rather than counting patients. So you would add patient and then aggregate report, give it a name. So what I'm doing is I want to view code term in my output, and I want to change that to count of clinical codes, because I'm counting codes, not people. The criteria want to be exactly the same as in the search above, otherwise it will cause confusion for the report and it won't reflect the same patients that you've chosen in your search. So I want it to exactly mirror the search above, including the time frame. So I want to make that last month. And I can run that. And when I run it and view the results, it gives me the number of blood tests. So you can see there that the population count is 1197, but the number of blood tests is 1308. And that's because some patients will have had more than one blood test recorded on their record during that time frame. Linked features. Linked features allow you to put a time link between two different features within a search. So they are very powerful options. If you look here, you create a search. So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put codes that I want to choose. And in this case, I'm going to put, I want to look for patients with blood sample taken last month. And on the same day, I want to see people who've had an ECG taken. So I'll put in the blood sample taken last month. And then I click on this bit here and date. And I want to look at the latest 99. That means that it's not restricting to just the latest one, because it might be that they've had more than one blood test in the month. And then I want to look for codes that are on the same date. So date is equal to the above feature, and a clinical code list is ECG. So you can see the two features there: blood sample taken last month, and the latest 99. Then include codes, and it's 12-lead ECG on the same date. So I can support practices. I'm looking to support practices with aspects of process and data management, such as building resources to maximise achievement of ESS and QIF and any other contractual requirements, development and implementation of recall systems, frailty resources, CVD prevention, and of course migrating existing resources into SNOMED. So please do get in touch if I can help with any of these things in your practice. Just as a bit of an example, frailty indexing, for example, I've created searches that highlight those patients over 65 who perhaps don't have a Rockwood score. I've created a little pop-up for the bottom right-hand corner to remind you to record a Rockwood, and a little mini template that you can click on that alert and launch a little mini template to help you to update the record. Recall system, a simple month of birth system based on all the QIF conditions, including patients on 4 or more repeat meds, and including data quality searches to help you to tidy your registers. And CVD prevention, I've taken the QI documentation and built some risk stratification searches for hypertension based on the Welsh QI requirements. And I can offer that on an individual practice basis or on a group consultancy basis, depending on what suits you best. So please do get in touch. My contact details are there, and I look forward to working with you soon.